Hi, everyone. Player movement could be happening real soon here. As soon as the World Series is over, the snow will start to fly. We'll talk about that, any Counsell news, and a winter warm-up happening for the Milwaukee Brewers. All that happening on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, as soon as the World Series ends, free agency is going to hit here in the next several days because the World Series, we're taping this before the start of Game 5 between the Diamondbacks and Texas Rangers, and that's only a matter of time before that thing ends. But yeah, things are going to start flying. Player movement, contract options will be decided. The general manager meetings are coming up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and November could be a busy month. We're in past... back in the day, we'll say, you didn't see player movement and stuff happen until December. But now with these general manager meetings that are happening in December, you got the baseball winter meetings. But with these general manager meetings, this is like the baseball winter meetings because stuff flies from the 7th through the 9th in Scottsdale, Arizona. The general manager meetings will take place, and sometimes teams lay the groundwork for potential trades. How does this all mean for the Milwaukee Brewers? Well, we'll tell you about that and the non-tender stuff that's coming up here with the Brewers. We'll get out to all that here on the show. We'll touch in Craig Counsell as well. Any movement on Craig Counsell? We'll give you the latest. And some Brandon Woodruff news. I guess somewhat encouraging. We'll get some of your tweets as well, what you had to say about the Counsell situation. All that coming up on this edition of Locked On Brewers. My name is Chuck Freeman, first-year host, longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin, proud host of Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here. And of course, we are here every day talking Milwaukee Brewers baseball. And when something breaks, we're right at it. We're going to tell you anything, any news. I've been waiting till like later on in the day to do these because I just don't know if some news is going to break during the day with Counsell. He's been meeting with these teams, and now you hear the Houston Astros are involved, which I would think is a pretty attractive team to go for, right? To be on the Houston Astros, the tradition they have, maybe more so than the New York Mets. I mean, Houston's the 4th biggest city in America. People forget that. And they've had some tradition, some bad tradition too. We won't get into that, but we'll get into all this stuff coming up here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This show brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $100, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's very easy to do. It's $150. If your team wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. All right, everybody, let's get to some of these key dates that are coming up right after the World Series ends, which could be as we speak right now. Free agency is happening, where teams have a 5-day window that they can negotiate with their own team, and then after the 5-day, at 4:00 on the 5th day, they can begin talking to other teams. But there's a five-player window here, a 5-day window. And the free agents that the Brewers have right now, I mean, are they really going to re-sign any of these guys? Jesse Winker, no. Carlos Santana, no. Victor Caratini, I have some interest in. Darren Ruff, no. Remember when he picked up Darren Ruff in the season? He lasted like 9 days or so, 10 days, and he was on the injured list. Eric Lauer, no, he's down in the minors, and I don't know if there's any interest for him from anybody. So he might just be sticking around. Josh Donaldson, no, had enough of Josh Donaldson. Colin Ray might be a free agent they might resign of all these guys. Ray and Caratini, but Santana's gone. Winker certainly is not coming back. Eric Lauer, probably not. Maybe on a minor league thing. Darren Ruff, no. Josh Donaldson, definitely not. So teams will have from the end of the Brewers will have until the end of the World Series here for the 5-day window if they want to sign any of these guys. Otherwise, after the 5 days, they become quote unquote unrestricted free agents. So they're restricted free agents for the first 5 days, unrestricted. Free agency starts in November. These guys can, hit the free agent market. It's not like the old days where you had to wait to a certain date. It's right after the season here. Those baseball general manager meetings, November 7th through the 9th in Scottsdale, Arizona. God, what a great place. Just love going out there. I'll be out there in November, a few weeks after. Well, it is November now. A few weeks after, these guys will be out there golfing out there, but these guys will be at a nice resort, probably doing some golfing, talking about potential trades, deals, and all that. The general managers meetings. I mean, what do these guys got to talk about? They're all independent contractors for their own team. Not like the owners' meetings where, these owners get together and they decide on the rules and statutes for baseball. General managers meetings. These guys are getting together and talking trades and how they can better their teams and having a few beers. That's what's going on there. So hopefully, the Brewers are going to be maybe laying some groundwork and doing a few things because we need it to be a busy offseason. That payroll, 120 to 130 million, I thought it was. That's not good enough. It's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for you. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough. Although 440 million was not good enough for the New York Mets. And that's why we're in this position of waiting to see what our manager is going to do. November 14th, Rule 5. You have until November 14th to protect Rule 5 players. And then November 17th this month is the deadline for protecting or the non-tender deadline, where you're going to decide if you're going to tender contracts to anybody. This guy's going to have a contract, this guy, or you're flat out going to release a guy, non-tender him, and he becomes a free agent. Now, here's the guys on that list. Hobie Milner. Do you tender him a contract? Hobie had a great year. Is he going to duplicate what he did this past year? But a nice option. I want Hobie Milner back on the Brewers, definitely. Tyrone Taylor is interesting. You got enough outfielders. But he had such a great September. You kind of have to think about it, don't you? With Tyrone Taylor? But probably not. If you lost him, no loss there because you got enough guys who I think are better than him. Bryce Wilson, he had a career year, I think, this past year. Maybe stat-wise he didn't, but certainly the eye test, that's better than I ever expected from Bryce Wilson. Came in there, held games tight, throwing there in middle relief. Okay. Not really any high leverage, although he pitched some extra innings when they had nobody else to throw out there, and he did a nice job of that. So Bryce Wilson, I remember a game late in the year, I think against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, got the job done in extra innings. Willie Adames, that'll be interesting. They'll tender him. Brandon Woodruff, they're going to tender him. We'll get to some Brandon Woodruff chatter a little bit later on because he spoke to the Journal Sentinel, Todd Rosiak, the other day. We'll talk a little bit about that. Rowdy Tellez, are they going to tender him? They better not. They better. They never should have had him as their everyday first baseman to begin with. Not at all. Not one part of me thought that guy was long-term. I don't know what the analytics were thinking, what the numbers guys, in that front office at the Brewers was thinking. But Rowdy Tellez, the Freeman eye test says, Rowdy Tellez, we can do better. I said this from the very beginning, even when he was hitting his 35, 38 home runs and his .217 batting average. No disrespect to Rowdy Tellez. He had his bobble day. He had his shot. But he is what he is. We need to do better at first base. I think all of us would agree. Wasn't on the postseason roster. Probably wasn't going to be on the postseason roster if they went any further than the divisional playoffs. Why would you? Tender Adrian Hauser, fifth starter. Fifth starter. You might need him. You're definitely going to need him, actually. So Adrian Hauser, because you're not going to have Woodruff, and with Corbin Burns, we don't know if he's even going to be on the team. He's another guy you'd tender a contract to, obviously. That's a no-brainer. It'll be interesting how that one plays out as well. if they go to arbitration again. And we know how it ended up poorly for him, not so poorly for the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll get to all that here in the next couple of weeks. The non-tender deadline again coming up on November 17th. Chuck Freeman here. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Score early this season with FanDuel. I was telling you a little about FanDuel. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, is the way to go. You want to put some money on the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 1-2 against the spread so far after losing the first two games against the spread. They came back and won by 0.5 point against the spread against the Heat the other night. But yes, score early in the NFL season. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. I don't think the Packers have covered since September. They haven't won since September. They haven't covered since then either. But right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is great. Any winning $5 bet. You could put $5 on a heavy favorite, and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. They're literally giving you $150, FanDuel, for making a winning $5 moneyline bet, which is easy to do. $150 if your team wins that bet. You've been thinking about joining FanDuel. There's no hey, right now we got the sports equinox going on. We got football, baseball, basketball, hockey going on. College basketball starting next week. College basketball seems like every night they're playing Tuesday and Wednesday. College football right now late in the year. And you need to get on FanDuel. There's lots to bet on, guys. Lots to bet on. There's no better time to get in on spreads, player props, over and unders, and all that. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. All those player props. I like spreads. Money lines are pretty cool as well. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season and kick off your winter season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. We are coming right back after this. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host. Good to have you along. Thank you all, everybody, for following me along. Chuck Freeman, longtime sportscaster. I didn't even introduce myself this time. Longtime sportscaster, KFIZ radio sports director, AP radio, been covering for them for decades now. And, of course, longtime sports talk show host in the city of Milwaukee. The Brewers are my favorite team, and I love doing Locked On Brewers every day, talking Brewers baseball with you. I've been sitting back and watching this Counsell move and seeing if anything's happening all day today. You know, I'm checking Twitter. I'm out having a burger last night with my kids' hockey game, and checking Twitter to see what's going on. What's going on with Craig Counsell, because I don't want to drop an episode and then the Craig Counsell move happens. So I'm just like, on top of this stuff, curiosity, but I want to be there for you guys too when this news does drop, which I think is going to happen probably soon. I would guess it's going to happen soon. He's talked to both teams. The Mets aren't interviewing anybody, it seems, although it sounds like they might. The Guardians have interviewed a few, and now the Houston Astros. They haven't made any plans to interview Counsell, but it sounds like they're interested. But, follow us along on all the downloads, Google, Spotify, Apple, all the major downloads. Go to YouTube, hit Locked On Brewers, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. So we told you about all the decisions that need to be made, the player movement. There's going to be some November player movement. There's going to be some Brewers news. Baseball is such where it's 12 months a year now. It's just not at the baseball winter meetings. It's just not when spring training happens, or occasionally, on a winter's night in January. There's news always going on in all the sports and the baseball as well. Yeah, Craig Counsell news. It was reported in the New York Post. The one tidbit I did dig up today, it was reported in the New York Post that Craig Counsell has some serious interest in the Mets. There you go. There's the New York newspapers being over dramatic again. So, well, of course he's got some serious interest. He's probably got some. You would have to have serious. You're not going to go. He's not going to waste his time going to New York or going to Cleveland if he didn't have some serious interest in any of the teams, right? Unless he's using those for a better deal with the Brewers, which could be part of it. But yes, you definitely probably got some serious interest there. He's got some serious interest in the New York Mets. No kidding. He's got some serious interest in the New York Mets. Reports the New York Post. You talk about any of the newspapers that like to report on innuendo and rumor and fabricate. It's the New York Post. They love to do that. Serious interest. Craig Counsell's got some serious interest in the New York Mets. Saw that news midday today. I'm like, sure, of course he does. Wouldn't be wasting his time going out there. But like I said, I do think something's going to happen here in the next couple of days. I don't think we're going to see teams or him. You would think it's in his ballpark right now. I would say the job with the Mets is probably his if he wants it. Nothing reported on it, no concrete news, but I would say just looking at it, that is probably his job if he wants it. Cleveland Guardians, I don't know how much interest they have in Stephen Vogt. Remember when he was here, good guy, smart baseball guy. And who knows, Vogt might be the answer in Cleveland over Craig Counsell. We don't know that. We don't know if Counsell is going to be the answer. He's the one with more managerial experience. But as we're seeing, it doesn't matter if you have managerial experience anymore. You know, the days of starting off at single A and working your way up the post, third base coach, and then manager. No. Some of these guys are getting jobs, you know, a day after they're done as a major league player. Look at Counsell. He spent like a year in the front office of the Brewers as a special assistant, whatever he was doing there. And then next thing you knew it, Renicky got off to a slow start, and Craig Counsell, no managerial experience, no coaching experience, is the manager. So you don't need managerial experience on the minor league level or coaching level or whatever to get these jobs anywhere. But I'll reaffirm Craig Counsell is the best candidate out there, at least on paper. Whether he's the best fit for any of these teams, that remains to be seen until after the fact. Brandon Woodruff. Some news on Brandon Woodruff. He sat down, had a phone conversation with Todd Rosiak in the Journal Sentinel. Woodruff is supposed to be beginning the rehab for his shoulder surgery. Said, you know, he did downplay the surgery and all that. Said, and he maybe, you know, of course he's not going to say, well, you know, I had major surgery and they didn't know if I was ever going to pitch. Of course he's not going to say that. But he said there's a little bit of a tear. He doesn't see how any way he's not going to not make it back. Okay. And he expects to be 100% once again. And that may be all about the truth, but that's Woodruff because he's not going to, again, because he knows he's got money on the line. Woodruff telling us that it was not that big of a deal, the surgery. What he says and what is actually done, and he might be right, but he's not going to say, well, yeah, I had the major surgery. They told me I had such a cut in there and such a tear. They didn't know if it's going to be a long process. Well, of course and the Brewers are going to do their due diligence on that, look at the medicals and all that. But he was asked about, would you possibly be taking a 2-year extension? Buying him out. He's got under club control this year and then could technically become a free agent 2025. And he was like, well, yeah, I could, but he knows it. But then he's a humble guy. He is. And he's great for the clubhouse. He's a good guy, but he also knows his worth. And he let Todd Rosiak know that. Yeah, but he knows his worth and he should. He shouldn't sell himself short. And if anybody's going to come back, he's got the work ethic to do it. And he was going to Birmingham. He was making a car ride, I think a 2-hour car ride, according to the article, from Mississippi to Birmingham to begin his rehab process. With fixing up his shoulder and getting his shoulder ready. And he was asked could he possibly left the door open possibly for 2023 to pitch. We'll see. But sounds like it probably was maybe a matter of time before that thing torn, because he came back after injuring himself in April. He did come back and pitch in July and August and was great. But it sounded like it was just a matter of time before it was going to another little tear, and it needed surgery, and he got the surgery. But, best of luck to him, and I hope he does come back. And I do hope the Brewers give him a 2-year contract extension. Now, could they be throwing money away? Yes, but if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on Brandon Woodruff to come back from this. I would hate to lose him. All right, we'll come back. Some of your tweets about Craig Counsell, and the winter warm-up is happening for the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll get to that all coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our downloads, Google, Spotify, Apple, or on all the major downloads, anywhere you get your audio podcast. We are there for you. We are the number one Brewers podcast on the internet because of you great fans out there. And of course, our growing YouTube audience. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers on YouTube, and you're going to get our 30-minute episode daily right here during the winter months, talking Brewers baseball with you as it happens, as the news happens. So subscribe to YouTube, our YouTube channel, Locked On Brewers, and hit that little bell that alerts you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. We drop the episode at night. I try to drop it, at night, 8, 9 o'clock at night, depends. And of course, the audio episode, we drop that one overnight, usually about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. All right, let's get some tweets. Let's see what you all had to say about Counsell. We'll read a couple of these because there's a lot of them. I put something out there about Counsell. I said, Craig Counsell becoming a free agent. Mets Guardians are staying here. What is your gut feeling? Dan says he's gone. The Brewers will not pay him what he's worth and have an owner that isn't committed to truly investing resources. Chad says, I would take the Astros job if offered if I was CC, Craig Counsell. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying to start the show. If I was Counsell, I would take the Astros job over the Mets job. Winning tradition, stepping in a spot. Like I said, with the Mets, you have nowhere to go but up. In Houston, you got the pieces there to maintain. You're ready for a World Series. You're ready to contend again, and again. Good front office as well. Real good ownership. Counsell ain't taking any of that cheating, that's for sure. I know that. Jeff says, get Gabe Kapler. Yeah, with all due respect, Jeff. Nah. Pitchers and Pitchers says, let's get to Melissa. Melissa says, my gut says he's going to the Mets. I think he's known that for a while. I think that's why we saw Jesse Winker in the playoffs. I think it was his final gift to Mark A. So in other words, Melissa thinks that Counsell batted Jesse Winker twice in the playoffs in both of those games. Was his way of giving the middle finger to Mark A. Never thought of that. Rebecca says, I hope he stays and surprises us all by staying here, and the Brewers will pay him. Bruiser says, if he only met with the Mets, I would be worried, but now he met with Cleveland. I think he's coming back. Eugene says, I thought the Mets, but thinking he might be ending up in Cleveland. Rex says, wish him the best, but thank you for all he did as a player and manager. A Milwaukee legend. He certainly is. Whitefish Bay is no man. We love Whitefish Bay, but it's not Manhattan. Well, I don't know how Manhattan is these days, but it was a pretty cool place when I went there back before COVID. Where Doom says, got to see how these kids pan out. If we bring home a title, he'll die a legend. Hope he stays. Prime Kid says, gut feeling is Mark Antanasio is cheap. Matt says, he's history. He's gone, with a picture of Roman Reigns. Steve says, I think he wanted to find out what his value is around the league. I don't want him to come back, which means he'll be back. I don't want him back, which means I think he'll be back. It's like saying, well, bet on the Packers because I know the other team is going to cover the point spread. Carlos says he's gone. Come sail away, says Mets. WDB Badger says he gone. Nick says he's gone. You would think he would have signed the extension by now. You're right. Checking out his value. There's no doubt about it. Brewers announced today the winter warm-up. They have not had this in quite a while, until back before COVID. The winter convention, you might say, a Brewer convention. They're doing 2 days. Saturday, Sunday. Saturday is going to be your thing where you get the autographs and so on. There's going to be a stage show with the announcers and all that. And then Sunday is going to be it sounds like to be a baseball clinic. They're trying something different this year, a 2-day event. It's going to be at the Miller High Life Theater, which is right next to the old Milwaukee Arena, the Panther Arena right now, the old Milwaukee Auditorium. That's where it's going to be held. And a 2-day event. So they went from having one on a Sunday, which was usually between the week of the NFC, AFC, the week of the football championship games and the Super Bowl, the week between, the bye week between the Super Bowl and the championship games. But now, January 13th and 14th, they're going right up against the playoffs here. They're not waiting. Well, you know what? I think if they wait longer, the NFL season's going longer too. So I think that might be part of it. So they're going right up against the NFL here in the postseason. They probably think, though, the Packers aren't going to be in the postseason anyway. They waited long enough to say, okay, well, the Brewers aren't in the postseason. Let's do it mid-January. We'll do it mid-January. I think the event should be at Miller Park. Again, get people coming to Miller Park. Don't get them going downtown on a weekend. No. Keep them. The Packers would never do this. The Packers would have people coming into Lambeau Field, the atrium. They would keep it all in-house. They wouldn't be farming it out. Keep people coming into AmFam Field. Maybe they need to get this heating, but there's no room inside to have a Brewer convention inside of AmFam Field. You don't have enough facilities. It's that cold in there. I guess January, it's going to be 40 degrees, I think, probably in there. 50 degrees, I guess. But I'll say this, though. If you can't do it, if it's not feasible, there's not enough other rooms in that place to hold this, okay? Then once they're gonna put heat in this place. They're winterizing it. Once you winterize this as part of this financial package, then you better have it at AmFam Field. There's no excuse for farming it out to the Miller High Life Center, the auditorium, the convention center, State Fair Park, anywhere. You need to have this at AmFam Field. Get people used to coming to AmFam Field. People go there through end of September, early October, come back in late March. Get people used to coming to that facility. Get used to it, yes. And it's a step in the right direction by winterizing it. But once you winterize it, hold this Brewers Winterfest or whatever they want to call it, this winter warm-up. Hold it at AmFam Field. I'll be farming it out to other facilities. It's going to do it. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you all you everydayers for joining me every day. Follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Follow me along. Download our podcast, Google, Spotify, Apple. Go to YouTube. Hit Locked On Brewers. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button, the like button. We'll be talking to you and looking for the latest Brewers news every day here on Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. So long, everybody.